An increasing prevalence of fires around the world. Add to that the high cost of living, new technology, and obviously changing urban demographics are all contributing factors in one way or another to increasing risk. But it's the fire issue that is important, and that's what I want to focus on. My name is Jeremy Maggs. I'm in conversation today with two experts. Tom De Nooij, Senior Instructor at the National Fire Protection Association and Managing Partner at Riskonet BV Netherlands, along with Ruben, Technical Director at Riskonet Africa. To both of you, a very warm welcome. Tom, maybe the starting point, the National Fire Protection Association. It's a US-based organization, I understand. What is it and what does it do?
Oh, correctly. It's based in the United States, and the funny thing is it's National Fire Protection Association, although it's used, basically their codes and standards are international, so maybe the International Fire Protection Association would be a better name, but it's still an American-based company. Funny thing is it's a non-profit organization. That means it's an organization that starts many years ago, and they are offering all kinds of codes and standards how to protect things. So not only for fire safety, but also life safety, all kinds of stuff, electrical safety. And these codes and standards are built by technical committees. And these technical committees, they're making these codes and standards, and then all the people in the world can also have votes on that. You can put input to these standards and codes and standards, try to change some things, or maybe you say, hey, listen, you committee, you missed this side of the danger or effect, and then they are able to implement that after a vote, and they are recycled every 3 years. That they're going to review, add new experiences into the standards, codes and standards, and of course in the United States, a lot of these standards are adopted by the local municipalities, local law.
All right. So, Ruben, let's talk about that adaptation if we can. You're a former firefighter yourself. You've been at the front line. Those codes and standards that Tom refers to, why are they so important, particularly from a risk management perspective?
As risk management has evolved, we've realized that there's property protection that also plays a very important role for insurers as well as owners of properties.
So, in terms of the South African situation, how important are those, and are they adhered to sufficiently, again, when it comes to the management of risk?
The South African codes, unfortunately, as we said, they started off, they were based on British standards, is really where we started most of our codes. A lot of those codes are focused on life safety, mostly. We are evolving, but we're not there yet. The primary focus of codes right now and building standards in our country, I believe, is based on life safety mostly.
Tom De Nooij, the relationship then between the association and Riskonet in Europe, what is it and why is it important to have that close tie-up?
You know, sometimes you have to be at the right place at the right moment. That's the story of life. And when in my previous job, I was looking for, more education. I want to know more about sprinklers. So I ended up doing a sprinkler seminar in the United States at the headquarters in Boston, or Quincy, where the NFPA is headquartered. And while I was there as a Dutch guy, the only Dutch guy, the people came to me and said, hey, listen, we see that there is also a need for these seminars outside of the United States. So maybe the Netherlands is a good place to organize these kind of seminars. And of course I said, yes, we can do that and I can do that. And you know what, I will organize it. So that means that in 2007 or 8, that's where we discussed it, 2008, the first 2 seminars were organized by us in Amsterdam. And well, from that point, we started to organize more seminars in Europe. And so we get a much more closer relationship. I get a much more closer relationship with the NFPA. And at a certain point, we also decided that at the business continuity point of view, it would also be better if there is a senior instructor for NFPA on the Europe side of the ocean. So that's how I get to the process, and that, since then it's evaluated. And the good thing is that as a consultant, we need to also give the people the possibilities to grow in their level of experience and level of knowledge about fire safety. That's in everybody's benefits. I mean, if there's only one life that we save by doing all these trainings,
all that effort will
be worth it. Yeah.
So then the relationship that you have with Riskonet clients, with insurance and brokers around the world, how is that managed and why is that important? Answer it from a global perspective, and then Ruben, I'm going to ask you why that's important in terms of the South African industry. But globally, why is that relationship so important?
Well, I can tell you that a lot of countries, let's say every country, has got its own life and safety building code, so to speak. But there are
some better than others.
Some better than others.
Outlined already,
yes.
Yeah.
But the United States started adopting sprinklers in these codes much earlier. So basically, what we see also now in a big part of the globe is that in the legal or the building codes, the sprinklers are not really adopted in there. And that will be coming. We are a little bit behind. Now, the NFPA for insurance perspective is that when I have an insurance in China and he is looking for a building in, let's say, Hungary, and there is a sprinkler building by the Hungarian sprinkler code, he doesn't know that code. There's no real, I'm not saying it's a bad sprinkler system, but the NFPA is globally recognized.
So there's a uniformity, I think.
A uniformity. So it's also more accepted by the international insurance market, and even a client, when it's a sprinkler system in accordance with the NFPA, it's more attractive to the insurance world.
As you're talking to me, I'm busy looking around the room and I'm looking for sprinkler systems here as well. Ruben, where's the local benefit then? You're looking for those sprinklers now too, aren't you?
Yeah. So if we just talk about sprinklers, the South African national standard that we've got is a 22-year-old standard, unfortunately. We've got a code of practice that a lot of people are using in this country, which has evolved with the times, which is a great thing. Unfortunately, as Tom said, a lot of these companies are reinsured internationally, and when you arrive, or when the client arrives, or the insurer tries to reinsure a client with a system that's not recognized, it becomes very, very difficult. So there's huge benefits in that on that side.
So now let's move on to that tricky question of cost, which is always something that is at the back of any risk manager's mind. Is it more expensive? And again, let's look at it globally first.
Yeah.
More expensive for clients to comply with NFPA codes rather than not to?
Well, that is, of course, when you are in favor of your local codes as a country, it's a very good thing to say. But unfortunately, that's not really true. I believe that there are no such things as NFPA pumps or NFPA tanks or NFPA sprinklers. I mean, the sprinklers you buy doesn't matter if your design is from a local code from the Netherlands or Germany or whatever, or from the NFPA. So it's the same sprinklers. Now, there is one thing that the NFPA does, that it's a standard, and it tells you how you can do it, right? So they say, for example, if you put your piping for your sprinklers, of course they're referring to the American pipes and American certifications on the pipes, that which is in America or in the United States is common. But and that's mostly in every chapter 1.5 of every NFPA standard, that's the equivalent rule. So if you think that you have pipes which are not really have the mark and the certification from the US, but your pipes, you believe, and you can say, well, these pipes have the same level of quality, you're able to use that. If you have a pump, the NFPA 20, which tells you everything about pumps, fire pumps, they tell you not what pump you have to buy, but only the specs that this pump should have. If you have a pump that is meeting those specs, It can be the same pump as a Dutch sprinkler code. Yeah. So it's not that you have to ship and bring everything from the United States to the country where you want to install the sprinkler system. That's not the case. So it's absolutely, I think it's not more expensive.
What's the local situation? Is there a cost then attached to standardization or global standardization?
I don't think there's a significant cost difference. If you apply equivalency rules, you prove that the scheduled piping that you're going to use, the hangers, all of that doesn't necessarily need to have the same approvals. But
It always comes back to the one life saved argument, doesn't it?
Yeah. And if it does the same job, and you can prove that as an engineer, the code will be applied uniformly, and also it will achieve the same objective at the end of the day at fairly similar costs, I believe.
Do the codes that we're talking about take into account local geographic requirements?
The NFPA has got all these conditions wrapped up in their standards. So from that perspective, I believe that it is suitable, yes. If I do a lot of teaching in the Middle East and look at Dubai, and all these buildings are erupted. You know, it's all well, most of them. I don't know exact the numbers, but most of them are all in line with the NFPA standards. And the civil defense over there, they adopted all these NFPA codes and they fit well.
What work does the South African risk community need to do then in order to catch up to the international standards that Tom has been referring to? Is there a huge deficit?
Right now, the code's development, as I said, our sprinkler code specifically, 22 years old. We've been battling for the last 5 or 6 years to get this code or the new draft legislation passed. If that process can be sped up, we can stay on top of developments.
How do you speed up the process? Red
Less
tape,
red
I think,
tape.
is the word that you're
red tape
looking
is
for.
what
Yeah.
I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Less red tape in terms of that standards development, that we can quickly change a code when it's necessary. That will make our lives a lot easier.
And also I think that if you look at the development of codes and standards or sprinkler standards, if you compare it in Europe, it's politically driven, right? And the NFPA standards are basically private standards. So that makes already a difference. You know, if it's much easier to update codes and standards to a newer edition than if it's politically driven. If I look at the European sprinkler standard, then you know, if you want to change something, then France says no, we're not agreeing. So it's political driven. Another thing is that a lot of the local legislation, they refer to specific codes and standards you have to refer to or be in line with. And the NFPA is most of the time not automatically adopted in those lists that you can choose. So for a legal perspective, if you choose the NFPA standard, the local law would say, well, hey, that's not in the list, so you cannot do it. You have to have your French standard or your South African standard.
So in conclusion then, advice, consultancy, assistance is absolutely critical. How can Riskonet support clients that want to consider the NFPA codes as their gold standard protection level?
As I said, it is a international recognized standard. It's up to date. It's always up to date. Well, you know, every 3 years it's updated. And of course, in a standard, it describes many situations, but every client is different. Every situation is different. So we have, because we are in this close contact, I am also joining 2 technical committees of the NFPA. We are as close as the campfire as you can get. So if we need specific knowledge, if we need specific resources to help out, you know, specific problems or ideas, we are able to do that.
And Ruben, I'll give the final word to you. That real-time advice, maintaining an absolute slavish adherence to the here and now about what is happening is critical. That's the work that Riskonet does locally in terms of code advice?
Most definitely. From our side, as Tom said, we're right there. Well, Tom, being part of these committees, is right next to the campfire. If there's changes that happens, these are filtered through to us, and then of course to our clients as necessary as well. And we can adopt and change our processes and thought processes, stay abreast of technology and changes in the industry. Yeah, most definitely.
And to our viewers, in case you're worried, that campfire that both of them are referring to is a very well managed campfire.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.